Oh dear. I don't like this world. There's so much needs to be changed, and I'm not the one to change it. No, sir. Nope. I'd rather hide my head in the sand like an ostrich. And no offense, I don't much like people either. That's why I live in the woods by myself. But don't get me wrong, there's lots that I do like. I like the woods. I like my little shack. I like my little dog. I like smiling. I smile all the time. That's why in town they call me Rip the Happy Hermit. And, best of all, I like to sleep out under the stars when the weather's fine. So, wake me up in a few years.
The Council of Canadians wishes to acknowledge that the Happy Hermit is sleeping in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not surrender these lands, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and established an ongoing relationship between nations. In the work that we do as activists, we strive to align directly with the beliefs and values of Indigenous peoples in a spirit of reconciliation and shared struggle.
Who are you?
Well, I am the Minister of Just Transition. They told me I might find someone back here.
And did they tell you you had to ruin my sleep?
Well, I'm here to share the good news. In 2022, people worked hard and they convinced the federal government to create a Ministry of Just Transition. Now, because of the climate crisis, we needed to move away from our dependence on fossil fuels, and many groups came together to plan how to make that happen in a way that would be fair, that would be just, that would consider the needs of our workers as well as the vulnerable people in our country. The new Ministry of Just Transition listened. Oh, we listened, and we have been making big progress in many areas over these past 8 years.
8 years? That was a long nap.
In fact, I'm sure you'd be interested in hearing about our progress on improving housing, for instance.
Why would you say that?
Well, you live in a shack.
Which is exactly where I want to live. But go ahead, tell me the good news. I like good news.
Well, let me introduce my Deputy Minister on Housing. They will tell us all about the many changes that have come about to reverse the previous affordable housing crisis. Deputy, please join us. It's good to see you, Deputy. Please come up and share your news.
I'm George Baranya. I'm Minister of Housing, and I'm really pleased to be here to be able to tell you about all the exciting developments that have taken place over 8 years in the housing sector. As many of you know, Nova Scotia and Canada was facing a serious housing crisis in 2022, and this forced the government to take an important step, and that was to declare housing a human right. And on top of that, they guaranteed that they would ensure that housing was no more than 30% of your income. Locally, Just Transition groups lobbied councils, and that produced two really wonderful changes. The councils adopted a wealth creation model for housing, and that ensured that the most vulnerable people would get housed. They also developed what is called a blended values approach. And in the blended values approach, all decisions council made had to take into account ecological factors, economic factors, and social factors. and also to look at the impact of those decisions on our future generations. Now, that led to also really important steps in how we approached housing. And one of those steps was that bylaws were passed requiring higher energy efficiency builds and green energy components in all those builds. And that reduced costs for renters, and it also reduced our carbon emissions. On top of that, nonprofits entered the housing sector, and the rental incomes that created some profits were reinvested in local community services and in green energy projects. Councils also prioritize funding for brownscape development and remediation and retrofits of commercial sites, which was really helpful because we didn't have to destroy landscapes. And we also, in those processes, did not end up having to supply added services, which are very costly to do. Councils also asked that when developers and people building houses asked for in-kind supports and subsidies, that they guaranteed that housing that was built was either net zero or that the housing that was built was affordable, or at least 30% of the units were affordable. These measures actually shifted the competitive landscape from the typical let's build it cheaply to something much more positive. Let's build it better and let's build it greener. So here we are today in 2030, and we have no longer a housing crisis. And people don't have to pay more than 30% of their income. And better yet, we're reinvesting the profits that do come out of rental units in our communities, and that's creating tremendous green jobs, and most importantly, our CO2 emissions are going down. Thank you.
So, you see, you no longer need to live in a shack in the woods.
But I like the woods, and my little dog likes the woods.
Well, you could still come back and visit, and you can walk your dog.
How could I do that exactly? I can't afford a car, and there's certainly no buses around here.
Ah, that is where you're wrong. This is 2030, remember? And public transport has also evolved. Now let me introduce my deputies on public transport who will share news of the developments there. Deputies, welcome, good to see you.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Megan.
What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for Godot. He's supposed to drive me to Bridgewater. I have a doctor's appointment.
Well, how long have you been waiting?
What year is it?
2030.
A long time.
Well, I'm going to wait here for the bus.
There's a bus in Lunenburg County?
Haven't you heard? Back in 2022, the 4 municipalities of Lunenburg, Bridgewater, Mahone Bay, the town of Lunenburg got together, set up a public transit system.
You don't say.
Now rural people can get into town without having a car. There are fewer polluting cars on the road. And we've got lots of money in our pockets because gas is $100 a liter now.
Oh, look, here it comes now.
Toot, toot, toot. Good day, ladies.
Welcome aboard. This is a wind-powered bus, as you can see with the windmill here, and it goes like Scoot on windy days. The wheels on the bus go round, 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 round.
Musical.
It is now.
Clang, clang, clang goes the trolley. Ding, ding, ding goes the bells.
All over Lunenburg County.
Ain't just because we're swell.
That's it, we're done.
Now, you see, you can take the bus, and they're pet friendly.
If I could afford it.
Which brings us to the issue of poverty.
Does he have to do that? He's scaring my little dog.
He does a good job. Welcome, welcome. So good to see you again, Deputy. Please share your news.
Thank you. Happy to follow the bus as well. And more happy news for you as well, more good news. So I'm Jeannie Chisholm, and I'm the Deputy Minister of Social Services and Care in Nova Scotia, and under this new ministry. So amazing to say, and what a celebration of a day, and happy to be here, that child and family poverty has been eradicated nationally. Yeah. So as we used to say in government in 2022, we see you, we hear you, we understand, and we will act. Well, however, this time we didn't just say it, we did it. We did act. So finally seeing and knowing that by far the greater economic cost and social cost was in not acting, to do nothing. So yeah, it was a win-win for all. So huge progress has been made. Here's what happened, here's the story. So the progress that was before seen as impossible to achieve has been made and has taken place since 2022. The list of changes in front of me here are just a small part of a much bigger story. And the bigger story was the endorsement and funding from all levels of government for a just transition. And for that to occur, there had to be a transformation within government, and it was a change that was huge. And again, never before expected. So it was a whole change in the way we did things. It wasn't a renovation. It wasn't a few tweaks here and there. It was really a transformation, taking apart structures and policies that created hardship and fed inequality. So it goes without saying that that took a lot of work. So tremendous pressure and a coordinated effort by Council of Canadians, of course, and all kinds of other advocacy groups whose untiring and strategic lobbying for a just transition got the government's attention. And plus funding. Attention is one thing, funding is another. So funding to right these wrongs with policies and solutions. All best practices, of course, and science-based. So governments in consultation led by communities and individuals developed recommendations which were adopted and also legislated. And all recommendations included a continuum of support in terms of what people asked for and what they needed. So here are some of the highlights. Combined federal provincial income benefits would meet or exceed a living wage level income. A national guaranteed livable income with yearly increases and adjustments for inflation. Increasing the Canadian child benefit amounts, which also supports the fact that government income support does work when done well, and enough of it. Reform of employment supports and income assistance, providing affordable, inclusive, public managed, not-for-profit, extended age childcare. Universal public health care, mental health, pharmacare, and dental, for example, would be some of the things that we are now able to cover. We also address the higher poverty rates for women and people of color. We supported Indigenous self-determination and continue to do so while decolonizing institutions. So this is our report card to date, and I want to say thank you to the Minister for your vision and leadership, for the hearer of the good news, and welcome to 2030.
Tremendous. What are you doing?
I don't think I want to sleep anymore. This sounds like a world that's worth being awake for.
Oh, no more hiding your head in the sand?
Well, not if I can be useful. Can I be useful?
Oh, I believe you can. And I think I know how you can. Listen to this. It's my... Deputy of Climate Change, please join us up here and share your news. Very nice to see you once again. Yes.
Well, my friends, here we are, 2030, and I have an exciting report to share with you. My name is Liz Powers, and I am the Deputy Minister for Climate and Environment in the Ministry of Just Transition. Today, I am here to celebrate with you the tremendous progress made over the last 8 years. The incredible rebound of biodiversity, ocean health, and air and water quality, coupled with the success of net zero programs, have put us well on our way to our climate targets for 2050. Working in partnership with Indigenous communities to preserve and restore Mi'kma'ki forests, wetlands, and marine habitat, our natural ecosystems are now providing more than 1/3 of the climate action needed to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. This is what we call nature-based solution, and this is very good news. And an end to clear-cutting and biomass practices and the increasing designation of protected parks, wildlife corridors, and marine areas have helped enormously to reestablish biodiversity. Implementing the Leahy Report recommendations, expanding the Medway Community Forest Co-op, and growing the base of the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust are very much part of this success story. Why? Because healthy and thriving forests are a force to be reckoned with as nature-based solutions to climate change. Did you know that the carbon stored in our intact forest alone hold 100 times Canada's annual output of emissions? That's twice the effectiveness of the Amazon forest. Intact forests and wetlands mean healthy watersheds and soil. What a joy to see the wild salmon returning to our rivers and our species at risk list cut in half. While these nature-based solutions that I've just mentioned accounted for more than 1/3 of the climate action needed for our 2030 targets, industry-based solutions have also helped meet our just transition goals. For example, we have redirected fossil fuel subsidies into proven climate solutions like renewable energy and efficiency. Better and stricter offset rules for industry have reduced corporate greenwashing as government and citizens demand clean consumer goods from start to finish. Net zero emission vehicles. Yes, Hermit, you heard that correctly. Net zero emission vehicles and infrastructure have increased tenfold, while price on pollution laws have reduced energy and consumer waste fivefold. The news just keeps getting better. For this celebration, I have saved the most recent good news for the last. The Ministry of Just Transition officially secured public ownership of Nova Scotia Power yesterday at 2 p.m. Woo-hoo! Woo! Thank you. We imagined a better world, one in which we respect the interdependence of our well-being and that of our natural environment. And I am so pleased to say the first phase of this just transition to address climate change has proven overwhelmingly successful. We've come this far, and we know we can go further. These positive changes and the impacts they've made on Mi'kma'ki and around the world has shown us that our 2050 goals are within reach. Thank you, Minister. Nice to see you, Hermit. Okay.
Deputy. Tremendous. Our new Ministry of Just Transition is transforming how we value our forests. You know more about these woods than anyone. Will you help us?
Not to be crass, but is there something in it for me?
Well, green jobs. Green jobs are what we're all about. I've have one last speaker, please. Deputy. Deputy, good to see you, and I see you're coming directly from a job site. Great work, great work.
And hello, Hermit? Now, did I hear that you're looking for a good green job? Well, if you're looking for a job in the forestry sector, you're in luck. I've just come, as my colleague has mentioned, from a job site where foresters and ecologists are working to restore our woodlands. We put an end to clear cutting, so now we harvest wood products only using the highest sustainability standards. I'm Merity Ross, Deputy Minister for Green Jobs, and let me tell you, 2030 is full of green jobs. Workers from the fossil fuel sector transitioned into the renewable energy sector, and now our power grid runs on renewable energy, which is more affordable for homeowners and electric vehicle users. Contractors, carpenters, and electricians have been busy doing home energy retrofits and installing residential electric vehicle hookups. As an investment in green infrastructure in Nova Scotia, additional to the municipal work that's been done to fund public transport here in Lunenburg County, local companies were contracted to establish an electric commuter rail line. Now, people from rural communities take the train to work in HRM or other regions of our province, which help to strengthen our economy and cut vehicle emissions. And as my colleagues have stated previously, we took the stress off of family finances and empowered more women and vulnerable people to rejoin the workforce with universal child care, pharmacare, and mental health care. In the last 8 years, we've also improved the quality of life for our medical professionals and increased our healthcare system's resilience towards new climate change-induced viruses. Meanwhile, conservationists, wildlife rehabbers, and Indigenous land guardians have been employed to conserve new wilderness areas across the country. Restoration specialists are helping communities like ours restore coastal areas for recreation, ecotourism, and protection against storms, erosion, flooding, and sea level rise. Together, captains, naval engineers, fishermen, and scientists are fishing ghost gear and plastic pollution out of our oceans. Our government partnered with fishermen, marine biologists, and the shipping industry to divert traffic from the migratory routes of marine mammals, like the no longer endangered North Atlantic right whale. From coast to coast to coast, we've worked with fishermen, Indigenous, and coastal communities to establish marine protected areas, which are restoring our fish stocks to sustainable levels. Open net finfish aquaculture has been abolished. Instead, aquaculturists now farm kelp and other seaweeds and shellfish, which have been restoring the water quality of our inlets, bays, and harbors here on the South Shore. Combined with our now sustainable agricultural practices and protections for pollinators, our farmers on land and sea are making our country food secure. The economy is doing great in 2030 thanks to green jobs. So, Hermit, if you're ready to work, there are plenty of green jobs for you.
So, how do you feel now about the new reality of 2030?
I feel good. You know, a change is as good as a rest.
Great. Come with me then. We'll get you signed up.
Oh, wait a minute. I have to bring my little dog. Tiny, Tiny, Tiny. Come on, boy. Come on. Come on, boy. There he is. Hi, Tiny. Glad you came. Oh.
Thank you all for joining us today for this event, which we hope has clearly demonstrated a vision of a just transition plan for workers and for our communities. Thanks to the actors, the speakers, the musicians, the stage managers, and all who have helped make this event come alive. We are gathered today on this unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. We recognize that the Mi'kmaq took care of this place for over 14,000 years before the arrival of settlers. These past few years have really taught us that climate change is the symptom of systems of power created by capitalism and settler colonialism. That's why, in our fight to protect our climate and our planet, we must always acknowledge the leadership that Indigenous peoples across the country and around the world have taken in this fight. And I'm sure you know that recently the IPCC, the global body of climate scientists, not exactly a bunch of radicals, recently released its most disturbing report yet about the scale of the climate emergency. Antonio Guterres, Secretary of the United Nations, has said, "As current events make all too clear, our reliance on fossil fuels makes the global economy and our energy security vulnerable to geopolitical crises. Instead of slowing down decarbonization, now is the time to accelerate the transition to a renewable energy future." It can't be any clearer than that. 3 years ago, our federal government promised to create a new Ministry of Just Transition. But this is going to happen only if we demand it. Today, there are over 50 communities across the country who are taking action, organizing for a just transition, because we know that we need to be out in the streets, in our communities, to make sure that it happens. We know the Ministry of Just Transition isn't real yet. As vivid as these images are, we have a long way to go, but we did see just now one idea of what a Ministry of Just Transition could do in a few short years. They could create millions of decent, dignified jobs. We have today imagined a world in which the final fossil fuel era is finally ending, and in a way, it's ending in a way that creates real support for workers and for our communities. And we also know that the other crises in our world that we face right now, the war, the rise of the alt-right, these are all deeply connected. Together we will win a just transition away from both fossil fuels and war, and the many other crises we're facing today. We can build an economy that's free of carbon, free of conflict. We can build a just transition away from war and climate chaos. Organizing is a powerful antidote to despair. We've had such fun putting this event together, and it has given us hope. And it's one way of transcending all of these crises, because just like the many problems that we face are all interconnected, so are the solutions. Events like this are how we build people power that's stronger than big oil, stronger than the war machine, strong enough to build a more just, more peaceful, more livable future. We can tell a different and a better story. So thank you all for coming together in support of this more peaceful and climate-safe future that I know we're all committed to building. This event is just the beginning. If you're interested in working on future initiatives, we have no idea what those could be, but there's a sign-up sheet at the back where you could, it's called, I think, Action for Just Transition. You could sign your name or speak to one of the organizers. Somebody mentioned that if these signs about our vision for what we live with in 2022 and what we envision for 2030, if you can't read them from where you're seated, feel free to come up and take a look. There are also lots of opportunities to take action. Our MP has committed to tabling this petition in the House of Commons. He hasn't done that, so we need to put pressure on him to make sure that he joins the 28, I think, others who have already done that. You'll notice that today's action is directed towards the federal government, and we need this legislation. We need it desperately. But there are many ways, and we've seen those demonstrated by our speakers, in which both provincial and municipal governments can help us move in that direction. So talk to your MLAs and your municipal councillors. So take a moment to take action at the back, to chat, to read these signs, to think about what you might want to contribute in this struggle. And before we leave, I want to leave you with a little quote that we shared at one of our planning meetings. And I think it speaks to what we are trying to do today. If we wait for the government, it will be too late. If we act as individuals, it will be too little. If we act as communities, it might just be enough. Thank you.